She charged toward him like a warrior ready for battle. Her voice rang out sharp and commanding, filled with the kind of authority that comes from years of telling people what to do. She was absolutely certain she held all the power in this moment. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't have imagined, was that the quiet man she was about to attack owned every single drop of water in that lake. Her fishing club's golden days were about to come crashing down. If you love interesting stories like this that expose the truth, please give this video a thumbs up and tell us in the comments section where in the world you are watching this video, and also do well to smash that subscribe button. The clock had just struck 7 in the morning when Marcus Washington backed his weathered pickup truck into the gravel parking area beside Crystal Lake. The lake sat like a hidden jewel just outside Riverside, North Carolina, where the morning mist still danced across the water's surface. The sun hadn't yet climbed high enough to break through the towering pine trees, and the water lay perfectly still, like a mirror reflecting the sky. Marcus, a 47-year-old man with gentle eyes and calloused hands, had been counting down the days to this moment for 3 long weeks. This wasn't just any fishing trip. This was his return to the place where his daddy had first taught him to cast a line, where memories lived in every ripple. He was just beginning to unhook the trailer from his truck when he heard the sound of rapid footsteps crunching across the gravel behind him. The sound was urgent, aggressive, like someone marching into battle. Marcus turned around slowly, and there she was. The woman looked to be in her mid-50s, with short blonde hair styled with precision that screamed, "I demand respect." Her sunglasses were already pushed up on top of her head, even though the morning sun was still low. But it wasn't her appearance that caught Marcus's attention. It was the clipboard she carried like a weapon and the forced smile that stretched across her face without reaching her eyes. "You can't park that thing here," she called out, her voice cutting through the peaceful morning air like a knife. Marcus blinked, genuinely confused. "I'm sorry, ma'am." She marched closer, her footsteps aggressive on the gravel. "This parking area is private property, designated for community use only. You need to move that boat immediately." Marcus set down his wrench and stood up to his full height, movements calm and deliberate. "Good morning to you too. Do you live around here?" "I'm on the Homeowners Association board," she announced, emphasizing each word like it was a royal title. "And you're not on our list of approved lake users. This lake is restricted to the Pinebrook Estates Fishing Club members only. What you're doing right now is trespassing." Marcus looked past her toward the lake's edge, scanning the entire shoreline. There wasn't another soul in sight. "I didn't see any signs posted," he said quietly. "There's one posted right by the pavilion," she snapped back. "You must have walked right past it." Marcus gave a small nod, still trying to keep things civil. "I've fished here many times over the years. Never had any problems before." "Well, you've got a big problem now," she said, her voice rising. She tapped her pen against the clipboard like she was keeping time to her anger. "Either you pack up that boat and get out of here, or I'm calling this in to the authorities." Marcus took a slow, deep breath. "What's your name, ma'am?" "Patricia Brennan," she said, standing taller, like she expected her name to strike fear into his heart. "And what's yours?" "Marcus Washington," he replied simply. She scribbled something on her clipboard with sharp, angry strokes. "Is that boat registered to you, Mr. Washington?" "Yes, ma'am, it is." "Well, Marcus," she said, and the way she said his name was dripping with condescension. "I'm sure you're just unaware of the rules here, but you can't just show up and dump your boat wherever you feel like it. We've had problems before with people leaving trash, breaking things, causing disturbances. This area is strictly for residents and their supervised guests." Marcus watched her carefully as she spoke. There was something about the way she said people that rubbed him the wrong way. She'd already made up her mind about who he was without knowing the first thing about him. "I'm not here to break anything," Marcus said, his voice still calm but with a slight edge. I'm just trying to enjoy some peaceful time on the water. You need to pack up your things and leave. Now." There was a long pause. Marcus looked down at the gravel, then out at the lake. Finally, he turned back to Patricia. "Ma'am, are you absolutely sure you want to push this issue?" She blinked, not expecting resistance. "Excuse me? You might want to double-check your information," Marcus said evenly. "I think you might be mistaken about who actually owns this lake." Patricia actually laughed, a sharp, shrill sound. "Is that supposed to intimidate me? Do you have any idea how long I've lived in this community?" Marcus didn't flinch. "Do you know who purchased this lake 3 years ago? Who maintains it, pays the property taxes on it, and signed off on your fishing club's access agreement in the first place?" For just a second, her confident mask slipped. It was small, just a flicker of uncertainty. But it vanished quickly, replaced by even more determination. "You're bluffing," she said, but her voice had lost some of its power. Marcus walked back to his trailer and began clipping the safety line back onto his boat. "All right then, ma'am. You do what you feel you have to do." "I will," she said. "You'll be hearing from the board about this." But Marcus wasn't bluffing. And Patricia Brennan had just started a fight she wasn't prepared for. By 9 o'clock, Marcus was floating peacefully near the reed beds on the lake's eastern shore. He'd cast his line into the quiet water, not really expecting to catch much, just enjoying the cool air. But his peace didn't last long. A white golf cart appeared near the dock, and even from a distance, Marcus could tell exactly who it was. Same aggressive posture, same quick movements. Patricia Brennan was back, but this time she hadn't come alone. A man in a windbreaker with a radio clipped to his belt sat beside her. Probably one of the HOA's hired security guards. They stopped at the edge of the dock, and Patricia planted her feet wide like she was commanding a courtroom. "Marcus Washington," she shouted across the water. "This is your final warning." Marcus slowly reeled in his line, turned his chair to face them, and waved calmly. "Good morning again, Ms. Brennan. I've contacted the sheriff's office," she announced triumphantly. "You are in direct violation of HOA regulations. You are ordered to leave these premises immediately." The man beside her looked uncomfortable. Marcus could see him lean toward Patricia and whisper something, but she shook her head and cut him off. "That man with you," Marcus called out. "Does he have a badge or just a walkie-talkie?" Patricia's face flushed red. "You don't need to worry about that." "Well," Marcus called back, his voice perfectly calm, "if you're going to accuse someone of trespassing on private land, you might want to make sure you're not the one who's actually trespassing." The security guard finally stepped forward. "Sir, can I ask what your business is on this lake?" Marcus nodded respectfully. "You can ask. I'm fishing. Are you a resident of Pinebrook Estates?" "No, I'm not." "Then I'm going to have to ask you to come ashore." Marcus pulled his tackle box closer, but didn't move to get up. "Have you ever heard of Crescent Holdings?" The young man paused, clearly confused. "Can't say that I have." "I figured as much," Marcus said with a slight smile. "Crescent Holdings is a private trust company. They purchased this land and the lake 3 years ago. I happen to be the sole trustee." Patricia scoffed loudly. "What? You expect us to believe some ridiculous story like that?" Marcus's smile widened slightly. "Ma'am, I don't really care what you believe. The paperwork is all filed with the Riverside County Recorder's office. It's all public record." The security guard looked uncomfortable. Patricia doubled down. "This lake has been part of our community for decades," she snapped. "Just because some shell company bought the land doesn't mean you can roll in here and act like you own the place." "Ma'am," Marcus said, his voice steady, "I didn't disrupt anything. You came to me." Her face turned an even deeper shade of red. "Fine. Let's let the sheriff sort this whole thing out. But don't expect any sympathy when they show up." Marcus leaned back in his chair and cast another line. I'm not looking for sympathy, ma'am. Just some peace and quiet. By Monday morning, Marcus stood at the counter of the Riverside County Recorder's office. He didn't need to be there. He already had all the documents at home. But something told him that this time, he needed everything to be official and bulletproof. The clerk pulled up the parcel records on her computer. A few clicks later, the screen lit up with his name, the complete property description, and a scanned copy of the deed. Everything was there. The lake, the dock, the entire surrounding green belt. All of it belonged to him, held under the Crescent Holdings Trust. Looks like everything's in perfect order, the clerk said. Back home, Marcus opened his laptop and began drafting a letter. Direct, professional, and absolutely to the point. It was addressed to the Pinebrook Estates Homeowners Association and all board members. He cited the terms of the original access agreement, emphasized that no renewal request had been submitted for the current year, and stated that effective immediately, public access to the lake through HOA or fishing club channels would be suspended until further notice. There was no angry language, no personal attacks, no threats, just a clear and legal revocation of access, backed up by ironclad documentation. Marcus attached scanned copies of the original contract, the deed, and a notarized statement of his trustee status. He drove to the HOA office and delivered it personally. That evening, his phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Washington? This is Robert Mitchell. I'm the acting president of the Pinebrook Estates HOA board. We received your letter today. Marcus stayed quiet, waiting. Look, we'd like to discuss this situation. Maybe there was some kind of miscommunication. There's no need to escalate things. There's nothing escalated about it, Marcus replied calmly. The agreement wasn't renewed. Access was being used without proper permission. I've simply brought everything back in line with the original terms. I understand that, Robert said quickly. But revoking access completely might not sit well with some residents. We've had use of that lake for years, and I haven't interfered with that, Marcus said. But after the way your board member approached me on Saturday, I think it's best if we take a pause. There was a long pause. Would you be open to meeting with us? Maybe we can find some kind of compromise. Marcus took a sip of his sweet tea. Let's see how folks handle a little humility first. He hung up without waiting for a reply. By Wednesday morning, Marcus couldn't pull into the grocery store without catching stares. It started with passive-aggressive emails from board members, then phone calls from numbers he hadn't heard from in years. At the hardware store, a man with a gray beard approached him. You Marcus? The man asked. I am, Marcus replied cautiously. The man extended his hand. Name's Billy Henderson. I live on Maple Ridge Drive. Been here about 20 years. Heard about what happened Saturday. Marcus shook his hand, waiting. Just wanted to say that not all of us feel the way Patricia does. She's had a habit of thinking she runs this whole place like her personal kingdom. I appreciate you telling me that. She even told my wife last year that our front porch furniture didn't match the neighborhood's aesthetic standards, Billy said with a bitter laugh. Can you imagine that? Marcus actually smiled at that. That afternoon, someone slipped a flyer into Marcus's mailbox. No stamp, no envelope. The headline was bold. Local man revokes community lake access. Retaliation or power grab? Marcus read it, slowly shaking his head. There was no name listed, but it didn't take a genius to figure out who had written it. The next morning brought a call from Jennifer Adams, a young woman new to the HOA board. I just want to apologize, she said sincerely. I wasn't there Saturday, but I heard what happened. Patricia doesn't speak for all of us, and frankly, some of us are embarrassed. That's good to know. There's talk of calling an emergency board meeting, Jennifer continued. Some want to reverse your decision. Others think we should negotiate a new agreement. I'm not particularly interested in negotiating, Marcus replied. I'm interested in being treated with respect. I understand completely. A formal notice went out that afternoon. Effective immediately, access to Crystal Lake is suspended pending review and renegotiation with Crescent Holdings. The neighborhood's reaction was swift and loud. Online forums lit up with frustration and wild theories. One post claimed Marcus was secretly planning to sell the lake to developers. That night, Jennifer Adams came by his house. "I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to speak at our upcoming emergency meeting," she said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "To say what?" "Whatever you think they need to hear. Most of them don't know you at all. They only know Patricia's version." Marcus thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, I'll come." The community room at Pinebrook Estates filled up faster than anyone expected. Folding chairs were pulled from storage. Neighbors stood along walls and crowded outside doors. There hadn't been a turnout like this in years. Marcus stood near the front, wearing clean jeans and a plain button-up shirt. No podium, no prepared notes. Just him, calm, steady, watching the crowd with quiet dignity. Patricia sat dead center in the front row, arms crossed tightly, jaw set like concrete. Robert Mitchell stepped forward. "Thank you all for coming. Marcus Washington has agreed to speak with us tonight. I'd ask that everyone keep things respectful." Marcus stepped into the center of the room. He looked around slowly, meeting as many eyes as he could. "My father used to bring me to this lake when I was 10 years old," he began, his voice carrying easily through the quiet room. "This was before any of this neighborhood existed. We'd fish in the early morning, cook our catch on the shore. I learned how to tie my first fishing line right here." A murmur ran through the crowd. People were listening. "I bought this lake 3 years ago through a trust that honors my father's legacy," Marcus continued. "I kept access open to the community. No fees, no conditions. I just expected folks to treat it with care and respect." He paused. "But when someone walks up to you, demands that you leave, and threatens to call the police while you're standing on your own property, that's not just about rules. That's about basic human respect." A woman in the back spoke up. "She didn't know who you were." Marcus looked at her directly. She didn't ask. The silence that followed was profound. "This isn't about punishing the community," Marcus continued. "It's about accountability. You've been using something that doesn't belong to you, without maintaining it, without renewing the agreement, and without even thinking about who's behind it." He stepped back slightly. "I didn't want it to come to this, but I'm not going to apologize for asking to be treated like a human being." That sentence hit the room like a physical blow. Several people lowered their heads. Then Patricia stood up, her face flushed, hands trembling with anger. "Why didn't you just come to us first?" she demanded. "Why go straight to shutting everyone out?" Marcus looked at her steadily, without anger. "You came to me first, remember? On the dock, with a clipboard and a threat." She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. After a moment, she sat back down slowly, face pale. Robert opened discussion. Several hands shot up. An older man in a fishing hat spoke first. "I don't care who owns what on paper. That lake is part of this neighborhood's life. My grandkids have grown up fishing there." Marcus nodded respectfully. "Then maybe the neighborhood should care enough to respect the person who's kept it open all this time." Another woman asked, "Would you consider renewing the agreement if the HOA took full responsibility for maintenance and put real guidelines in place?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He could feel the weight in the room. They weren't just mad anymore. They were listening. "I'll consider it," he said finally. "But I'm not rushing. Not until I know folks understand that this isn't just land. It's personal." The following days were strangely quiet. No more flyers, no anonymous calls, no teenagers fishing without permission. The same lake that had stirred up so much noise now reflected only trees and sky. Marcus didn't expect an apology from Patricia, and he didn't get one. But she stepped back. No more accusations, no more standoffs. Word had it she'd resigned from the HOA board to focus on personal matters, though everyone knew why. On Saturday morning, Marcus returned to the dock with a toolbox and paint. His dog Duke trotted beside him, tail wagging. The benches were still broken, the fencing still loose, but he wasn't bitter. He wanted to fix it, not for the neighborhood, but for himself, for his father. Midway through replacing a rotted plank, he heard footsteps behind him. Need a hand? He turned. Jennifer Adams stood there in jeans and sneakers, sleeves rolled up, holding a bag of screws and a cordless drill. Marcus nodded toward the bench. You know how to work that thing? I do, she grinned. You wouldn't believe how much HOA paperwork I fixed with this drill. He laughed and motioned to the broken bench. Be my guest. They worked quietly for 20 minutes before Jennifer spoke. You know, there's a lot of people in the neighborhood who want to make things right. Marcus didn't look up. Takes more than good intentions. I know. That's why I've been talking to the new board. We're drafting a revised agreement. One that includes maintenance, cleanup schedules, and a rotating oversight committee. He paused, then looked at her. No more clipboards and threats? No more, she promised. And any violations will be handled internally. You won't be bothered. I'll read it when it's ready. Later that afternoon, Billy Henderson returned with his teenage grandson Lucas. The kid held a trash bag and gloves. We figured we'd help out a little, Billy said. Might not fix everything, but it's a start. Marcus handed the boy a rake and pointed toward the trail where glass had collected by the brush. By sundown, the dock looked new again. The benches were solid, the path was cleared, and for the first time since the whole mess started, Marcus felt something shift. Not just in the space around him, but in the people too. At church the next morning, a few heads turned when Marcus walked in. Some nodded politely. One woman leaned over and whispered, "That lake is lucky to have you." After service, a man he didn't recognize approached him in the parking lot. "You're Marcus, right?" the man asked. "I live 2 streets down. My kid caught his first fish at that lake last summer. I never got the chance to thank you for keeping it open." Marcus didn't need the thanks, but it meant something. Not just because it was sincere, but because it came without being forced. A week later, Marcus stood alone at the edge of Crystal Lake. The air was cool, the water still, and the sunrise painted long streaks of orange across the surface. He hadn't brought his fishing rod this time. He just stood quietly, listening. Not to birds or breeze, but to the absence of noise. No shouting, no conflict. Just stillness. In a plastic folder under his arm was the revised access agreement. Jennifer and the new board had worked hard on it. This time there were clear terms. Scheduled maintenance days, a 3-strike rule for littering, mandatory renewal every 12 months. Most importantly, every member of the fishing club would now take a short orientation before being allowed to use the lake. Just a reminder of the lake's history, who owned it, and what it stood for. Marcus didn't do it for control. He didn't even do it for the apology that never came. He did it because letting people walk all over something precious doesn't just damage the place. It changes how you see yourself. And Marcus wasn't about to let one woman's entitlement rewrite a legacy built over decades. Later that day, he returned to the neighborhood clubhouse where the new board waited for his signature. As Marcus signed the last page, Jennifer leaned in. "We're going to do better," she said. Marcus nodded. "I'll hold you to that." On the way out, he passed a small group of teenagers near the bulletin board. They went quiet when they saw him, unsure what to say. Then one of them, a lanky boy with a fishing hat too big for his head, stepped forward. "Mr. Washington?" Marcus paused. "My dad told me you fixed the dock. Said I should thank you." Marcus gave a small smile. "Just take care of it." "We will," the boy said quickly. "Promise." Walking back to his truck, Marcus felt something ease in his chest. The kind of peace that doesn't come from winning, but from being understood. He thought again about that Saturday morning, about Patricia storming up with her clipboard, about how quickly she'd made up her mind about him. He hadn't yelled, hadn't pushed back with fire. He let the truth and the law speak for themselves. And in the end, that was enough. The lake had taught him that sometimes the best way to earn respect isn't to demand it. It's to walk with it quietly, firmly, and let others catch up. And maybe, just maybe, by standing still, you make enough noise for change. If you've ever been in a situation where someone underestimated you, where you were dismissed before anyone asked your name, remember this. Silence doesn't mean weakness, and standing your ground with dignity speaks louder than any argument.